Welcome the Lord's chosen. When you stop giving a F funny, isn't it? The moment you detach, everyone suddenly gets attached to your name. Not because you begged for attention, but because your silence, your solitude, your sharp boundary lines echo louder than their loudest insecurities. Let me drop a fact on you. According to multiple psychological studies, people who operate with a high degree of authenticity, not arrogance, authenticity, tend to make others uncomfortable, especially in group settings. Why? Because most of the world's addicted to pretense. And when you're not, you disrupt the entire algorithm of social survival. That's where you come in, the chosen one. Not because you're better than them, but because you did the work they're still avoiding. And now, they're scared to chop it up with you, not because you're mean, not because you're unapproachable, but because you genuinely don't care to impress them. And in a world built on performance, authenticity is rebellion. So buckle up. This isn't going to be cute, calm, or cozy. We're about to unpack why people fear your presence, avoid your truth, and why you'll never again apologize for the fact that they can't sit at your table without choking on realness. Number one, you're a mirror, and they hate their reflection. You make people uncomfortable because being around you forces them to look at themselves in a way they're not ready for. You don't need to say much. Your presence alone feels like a mirror they didn't ask to stand in front of. And the worst part for them, that mirror doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't bend to make them feel better. It reflects exactly what's there, all the insecurity, the fake confidence, the masked ambition, the shortcuts, the self-betrayals. You walk in and without even trying, you expose all the things they've been trying to hide, even from themselves. That's why people get nervous. That's why they act awkward or distant or overly nice or completely avoidant. It's not about you being rude or arrogant, it's the fact that you're not performing like everyone else. You don't shrink yourself to fit in, and you don't put on a show to be liked. You just are. And that kind of presence, raw, unapologetic, grounded, shakes people who are still building their identity on approval. You've probably noticed how people will go out of their way not to sit next to you, not to talk to you, or they'll overcompensate with fake smiles and dry conversations. It's because they can feel something different. You're not participating in the collective delusion. You're not laughing when it's not funny. You're not nodding to nonsense. And in a world where most people are living curated versions of themselves, that makes you feel dangerous. They're not scared of you. They're scared of who they become in your presence. Exposed, uncertain, and out of control, because deep down they know they couldn't handle living the way you do, free from approval, free from fake connections, and full of a kind of clarity that makes their excuses collapse. So don't take the distance personally. It's not rejection, it's revelation. Number two, you don't need the pack because you hunt alone. You don't need the pack because you learned how to survive and thrive without one. While most people are out here clinging to groups, chasing circles and doing backflips just to stay relevant in some fake community, you walk alone. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're not desperate for belonging at the cost of your integrity. You've been through enough to know that most support is conditional. It's only there when you shrink, when you play nice, when you don't outshine anyone. But the moment you stand tall, speak raw, or move different, they fall back. So you stopped relying on them a long time ago. People can feel that on you, that independence, that lack of neediness. It messes with them. Most people don't know how to act around someone who's not fishing for compliments, who's not competing, who's not performing for clout or comfort. You don't beg for access. You don't orbit around popularity. You've got your own gravity. That's why they're scared to chop it up with you, because they know you're not there to be impressed or entertained. You're there to observe. And if it's not real, if it's not solid, you won't stay long. When someone doesn't need the pack, they become unpredictable. You don't move based on loyalty to dysfunction. You're not trapped in groupthink. You don't protect lies just to keep the peace. And that means you're a threat to every dynamic built on fragile egos and unspoken truths. You're not heartless. You're just not codependent. And when people realize they can't manipulate you with approval, attention, or guilt, they label you too much, intense, or standoffish. But really, you've just graduated from the emotional games most people are still addicted to. So yeah, you hunt alone, but not because you're a loner. It's because you know the value of your peace, your power, and your presence. And not everyone deserves to eat with you just because they're hungry. Number three, you speak from scar tissue, not wounds. You don't talk from fresh wounds, you speak from scars. That's a whole different level of depth most people can't handle. You're not out here trauma dumping, begging for pity, or oversharing for attention. You've already been through the storm, sat with the pain, wrestled with the silence, and came out the other side with truth in your bones. When you speak, it's not emotional noise, it's real wisdom, hard-earned, lived, felt, survived. And that's exactly why it hits different. Most people are still bleeding, still reacting, still stuck in the middle of their chaos. So when you say something clear, calm, and straight up, it shakes them. Because they're not used to hearing truth without emotion wrapped around it. Your tone is steady, your words are sharp, your insight is uncomfortable. And that scares people who are used to fake empathy or sugar-coated advice. They want someone to cry with them. You offer clarity instead. That's not cold, it's courageous. But to them it feels like confrontation. You speak in a way that makes people realize how much they've avoided healing. You've already done the ugly work, screaming into pillows, losing people you thought were forever, being misunderstood, choosing growth over comfort. You don't have to raise your voice, your scars do the talking. And because you've processed your pain instead of parading it, your words carry weight, real weight, not performance, not preaching. Just the kind of solid energy that forces people to check themselves. That's why when you talk, people either lean in or shut down. There's no middle ground. You don't say things to make people feel better. You say things to make people see better. And most folks aren't ready for that level of raw honesty because it pulls back the curtain on all the lies they're still living in. So no, you're not cold, you're just complete. You've done what most avoid. And when truth comes from a healed place, it doesn't sound loud. It sounds undeniable. Number 4. You read energies, not words. You don't just hear what people say, you feel what they mean, and that alone separates you from most. While others get caught up in the tone, the nice phrases, the smiles, and the well-practiced delivery, you're listening way deeper. You're tuned into what's underneath the conversation. That quiet layer most people don't even realize they're giving off, their energy, their intent, their real reason for speaking. That's what you lock onto. So someone can be saying all the right things, acting polite, pretending to care, but if their energy's off, you catch it instantly. You feel the hesitation in their confidence, the envy behind their compliments, the shade tucked into their support. You know when someone's trying to get close to you out of curiosity, not care. You know when someone's offering help but secretly keeping score. They might fool others with words. They don't fool you, and that's what makes you dangerous. Not because you're out here exposing people, but because they know they can't run game on you. They know the usual tricks, charm, or social masks won't work. You read people before they even get a full sentence out. You notice the shifts in energy, the micro-delays, the avoidance in their eyes, the too smooth delivery. You clock the disconnect between their words and their vibe, and when they realize you see through them, they either get defensive or disappear. You don't do small talk because small talk feels fake. You're not cold, you're just not interested in surface-level conversations with people who have hidden agendas. You care about what's real. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially those who rely on being misunderstood to keep their game going. So they avoid you, or talk carefully around you, or label you too much when really they just can't manipulate the space like they're used to. You don't read scripts, you read energy, and that makes you unplayable. Number 5, you're intimate with silence. But it's not about power plays. Your silence isn't a mood or a tactic. It's a choice backed by precision. You're not quiet to seem mysterious or to play some emotional chess game. You're quiet because you've learned that words, when used carelessly, become noise, and you don't do noise. Every word you speak has weight. And if it doesn't serve a purpose, build something real or burn something false, you'd rather say nothing at all. People who operate on surface-level thinking misread you constantly. They think you're being distant, cold, or calculated. What they don't realize is that you've simply outgrown the need to explain yourself to people who don't really want to understand. You don't jump into every conversation just to be heard. You're not trying to dominate the room. You're watching, processing, deciding whether it's even worth your breath. Because once you do speak, it's intentional, and it often cuts through the bullshit so fast it leaves people stunned. That's the thing. Your silence isn't passive. It's not about avoiding conflict or pretending to be above it all. It's active restraint. It's discipline. You let people talk, expose themselves, show you who they are. Then if it's necessary, you speak. And when you do, it's surgical, clean, unapologetic, sharp. not to hurt but to remove what doesn't belong. And for those who thrive on constant talking, meaningless connection, and filling the air with fluff just to avoid themselves, your silence feels like judgment. Not because you're judging them, but because your stillness forces them to hear their own noise more clearly. Your quiet doesn't say, "I don't care." It says, "I'm not wasting energy on this." That's what makes your silence uncomfortable for some. It holds people accountable without ever raising your voice. It demands depth without ever asking. And in a world that can't stop talking just to feel important, your quiet confidence is the loudest truth in the room. Number 6, you kill comfort, not people. You don't show up to coddle egos or babysit denial. You're not the friend people run to when they want to hear what makes them feel good. You're the one they avoid when they're not ready to face the truth. Because you don't soothe lies, you set them on fire, you don't sugarcoat, you confront. You don't hand out soft pillows, you throw shovels and say, "Start digging, the old you has to go." It's not that you don't care, you care deeply, but your love doesn't come wrapped in comfort, it comes wrapped in clarity. And clarity, real clarity, is uncomfortable as hell. It doesn't whisper, it slaps. It makes people question the stories they've been hiding behind, the relationships they cling to out of fear, the identities they created for survival but now wear like chains. You walk into a room and without even trying bring a level of intensity that forces people to confront what they've been avoiding. That's why they say you're too much. Not because you're harsh, but because you don't offer illusions. You're the demolition before the rebuild, the controlled burn before new growth. People want healing, but most aren't ready to meet the version of themselves they have to become to get it. You already met that version. You already buried your old self. You earned your peace by facing your chaos. So when someone comes to you complaining about their mess but isn't willing to change it, your energy becomes uncomfortable. You're not out here to be liked. You're here to be true. You're not cruel, but you won't pretend. And in a world full of people stroking each other's delusions just to be liked, your presence feels like a storm, a necessary one. Because while most people want warmth, what they really need is transformation. And you're not afraid to be the one who sparks it, even if it means losing the room in the process. Number 7, you don't talk, you penetrate. You don't speak just to fill the air or pass the time. When you open your mouth, it's not about chit-chat or keeping things light. It's about truth. You cut straight through the fluff. People come expecting a casual conversation and leave rethinking their entire life. That's just how your energy works. You don't know how to stay surface level because you see through surface level. And once you see it, you can't pretend it's not there. You ask the questions that make people shift in their seat. Not on purpose, not to make anyone uncomfortable, but because your curiosity isn't shallow. You want to know why they're stuck, why they're still holding on, why they're pretending. It's never judgment, it's surgical. Your words go straight to the part of them they've been hiding or avoiding. You won't play along with their curated identity just to make them feel better. If they're lying to themselves, you'll feel it and you'll press, even gently, until the lie starts to crack. That's why people either avoid deep conversations with you or keep coming back for more. There's no middle ground. You're either the person someone can't stop thinking about or the one they ghost because they weren't ready to deal with what you stirred up. Either way, you leave an impact. And the wild part, you're not even trying to go deep. This isn't some performance. This is just your default setting. Truth is your native language. So when someone's faking happy, stuck in denial, or saying things they don't really believe, it hits a wall with you. You don't let it slide. Not because you're trying to be confrontational, but because you can't play along with things that aren't real. You don't talk. You shift perspectives. You break masks. You cause people to hear themselves in a way they never have before. And that kind of conversation, it's a lot more than a vibe. It's a transformation, but only for those bold enough to stay in the room. Number 8, you're too costly to approach without intent. Being around you isn't casual, it's a transaction of truth. You're not someone people can just casually vibe with while keeping their facade intact. You require presence, you demand realness, and the unspoken toll for getting close to you, honesty. Not just with you, but with themselves. And for a lot of people, that's too damn expensive. You don't accept surface-level connections. You're not impressed by charm, resumes, aesthetics, or spiritual jargon. If it's not real, you feel it. If it's performative, you ignore it. That alone makes people nervous, because most folks don't know who they are without the mask. Their personality is a patchwork of approval, survival, and social programming, and when they're around you, that stitched-together persona starts to unravel fast. You make people feel seen in a way they didn't ask for, and not everyone is ready for that. It's not that you're intimidating, it's that you're undeniable. You don't chase people, you don't fake interest, you don't say what's expected. So anyone who tries to engage with you without clarity, intention, or self-awareness, they end up feeling exposed. Because you're not a mirror for their ego, you're a reflection of their truth. That's why people hesitate. That's why they keep it light with you or stay quiet altogether. Not because you're cold or unkind, but because proximity to you means being real, and that costs more than most are willing to pay. You're not emotionally expensive, you're energetically non-negotiable, you don't entertain confusion, mixed signals, or hidden agendas. You don't allow halfway connections. If someone wants access, they have to strip off the act, the story, the game, and most would rather ghost than grow. So you walk alone a lot, but not out of loneliness, out of value. You've created a space around you where only truth can live. And that kind of atmosphere, it clears out everything weak, fake, or unready. You don't ask for much, just everything real. And in a world addicted to pretending, that makes you rare, dangerous, and damn near priceless. Number 9, you've mastered the art of not needing the room. You don't hang around waiting for a nod of approval or an invite to join the crowd. You've mastered not needing the room at all. Because here's the truth. You are the room. The energy, the presence, the standard everyone else is trying to reach but can't quite touch. You show up fully yourself. No scripts, no rehearsals, no bending to fit in. And that kind of self-possession throws people off more than you realize. Most people live in a constant state of wanting to be seen, liked, included. They chase validation like it's air, but you've stepped beyond all that. You don't crave the applause, the acceptance, or the inside jokes. You come from a place of quiet confidence where your worth isn't tethered to anyone's opinion or invitation. You simply exist on your own terms. And that independence, it unsettles people who are still scrambling for approval, because when you walk into a space like that, it forces others to ask themselves some uncomfortable questions. Why am I trying so hard? What am I really bringing to the table? What would it even mean to be like that? Your presence holds a mirror up not just to others, but to the entire energy of the room, exposing all the noise, the posturing, and the insecurity people usually hide behind. You don't compete for space, you create it. You don't hustle for attention, you command it. There's no agenda, no desperation behind your actions, just an unshakable foundation of being. And that's what makes you magnetic and intimidating all at once. You aren't waiting for anyone's permission to exist. And that freedom makes some people uncomfortable because it exposes how dependent they still are on external approval. You are the club. Not because you want to be, but because you refuse to settle for anything less than your full self. And that is a power most don't understand until they meet you and realize they'll never be able to replicate it. Number 10. You terrify the ones who only know control. Control freaks crave predictability because it feeds their illusion of power. They thrive on knowing how you'll react, which buttons to press, and which strings to pull to keep you tangled in their game. But you break their entire system. You're unreadable. You don't hand them the script they want to follow. You don't give them a line to exploit or an emotion to hijack. You're calm where they expect chaos, still where they demand movement, unshakable where they hope to provoke a crack. That leaves them panicked and desperate, scrambling for footholds that aren't there. Their usual tactics, gaslighting, guilt trips, passive aggression, fall flat because you don't respond the way they expect. You don't get caught in the drama. You don't bend to the pressure. You're a brick wall in a world of puppeteers. This kind of presence terrifies those obsessed with control because it exposes their fragility. It reveals that their power only exists as long as you let them control your reactions. And you don't. You own your peace, your boundaries, your truth. You're a force they can't manipulate or contain. That freedom is threatening because it dismantles their whole game plan. They might try to intimidate you, to rattle you, to make you stumble, but they fail every time because your calm isn't weakness, it's mastery. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to play their game to win. You simply refuse to play. In a world addicted to control, you are the chaos they fear. not because you're unpredictable for the sake of it, but because you're unbothered by their attempts to control you. And that makes you not just dangerous, it makes you untouchable. Number 11, you're the catalyst, not the comfort. People often say they want truth, but the moment it arrives raw and unfiltered, they flinch. You don't soften your words to make the truth easier to swallow. You deliver it like a dose of salt where it hurts the most. Your honesty isn't about sparing feelings or keeping things comfortable. It's about ripping through illusions, exposing cracks, and forcing real change to start. And that kind of truth doesn't sit well at first. It burns, it stings, and it shakes people to their core. You're not there to hold hands or pat backs. You're the spark that ignites discomfort, the trigger that pulls people out of their complacency. When you speak, you don't offer easy answers or sweet lies. You offer clarity that demands reflection, growth, and sometimes a tough reckoning. That's why people don't always want to be around you. They're not ready for the fire you bring. But the truth is, the real healing often starts after you leave the room. Days, weeks, sometimes months later, your words echo in their minds. It's not about regret or resentment. It's about the undeniable truth sinking in. Your voice becomes a relentless whisper, pushing them to question, to confront, to evolve. You're the catalyst for change, not the comfort zone. And that's exactly what makes your presence rare and essential. You don't create followers by being easy to listen to. You create transformation by being unavoidable. The truth you deliver isn't gentle because it doesn't have to be. It's effective because it's necessary. People might not always want you close, but deep down they need the disruption you bring. Because growth rarely happens in comfort zones, and you, more than anyone, know that well. Number 12, you're evidence that it's possible. And that's threatening. You are living proof that the path less traveled isn't just a myth or a motivational quote. It's a damn reality. You didn't sell out to fit in, didn't shrink yourself to make others comfortable, and certainly didn't beg for acceptance. Instead, you stared down hell, endured what most won't even whisper about, and built something solid from the ashes. You crafted your own table, your own kingdom, and you did it on your terms. That kind of realness shakes people to their core. Your existence forces others to look in the mirror and face the ugly truths they'd rather keep buried. When they see you thriving without bending, without shortcuts, without excuses, it exposes their own fears and weaknesses. It calls out every lie they tell themselves about why they haven't grown, why they're stuck, or why they can't break free from their comfort zones. Your reality is an unspoken challenge, proof that change is possible if they stop hiding behind excuses. But facing that truth is uncomfortable, even terrifying for many. It demands accountability, courage, and a willingness to get messy with their own shit. That's why so many choose to disappear instead of confront. They'd rather ghost you, avoid your presence, or label you as too much, because evolving requires work they're not ready to do. It's easier for them to pretend you're an outlier, a lucky anomaly, rather than admit they're holding themselves back. You're a threat because you dismantle the narrative that success, peace, and authenticity come from conformity or compromise. You show that it's possible to be whole without sacrificing your soul, and in a world built on shortcuts and illusions, that kind of truth is disruptive. You don't just exist, you unsettle, and that's exactly why your presence is so powerful, so rare, and so necessary. Number 13, you're not lonely, you're rare. People see your space, your quiet moments, and assume loneliness is your companion. But they couldn't be more wrong. You're not lonely, you're rare. The world confuses constant noise, endless socializing, and surface-level connections for life itself. But you figured out that real power comes from silence, from stepping back, and from owning your own company. You're not hungry for crowds or desperate for attention. You don't need validation from the endless scroll of faces or the constant buzz of chatter. Instead, you choose solitude, not because you're avoiding people, but because you understand what most miss. Solitude is where the real work happens. It's where you sharpen your mind, deepen your understanding, and build resilience. It's where your truth gets louder without the distractions. This isn't isolation or withdrawal, it's incubation. You're preparing, evolving, and strengthening in ways that noise and chaos can't reach. You're cultivating a self so solid that when you do step back into the world, you don't just show up, you arrive. Your energy is deliberate, focused, and magnetic because it's born from a place of deep self-awareness. not from a desperate need to be seen or heard. Most people fear silence because it forces them to confront themselves. But you embrace it, knowing that in those quiet moments, you're becoming exactly who you need to be. So no, you're not lonely. You're rare, because you value quality over quantity, depth over distraction, and presence over noise. And that rarity is your strength. Number 14, you're the end of their illusions. You're not here to entertain fantasies or stroke fragile egos. You don't participate in the dance of illusions that most people rely on to feel comfortable. Instead, you come in like a wrecking ball, breaking down the walls built from lies, half-truths, and convenient stories. When you show up, the masks start to slip, not because you're out to shame anyone, but because you refuse to play along with deception in any form. People often try to surround themselves with comfortable lies, echo chambers, and filtered versions of reality. It's easier to live in denial than face the raw, uncomfortable truth. But you don't validate the smoke and mirrors. You call things out, you expose contradictions, and you challenge the narratives that keep people stuck in their illusions. In your presence, those flimsy facades don't stand a chance. They crumble, exposing what's really underneath. For many, this is terrifying. They've spent years building these illusions to protect themselves from pain, failure, or the unknown. Your refusal to feed their delusions forces them to confront parts of themselves they'd rather avoid. It's a confrontation with honesty so raw, it feels like a threat to their entire identity. That's why some avoid you or push back. They fear what happens when the illusions end. But you don't back down because you know that only when illusions die can growth begin. You're not the villain, they're just afraid of truth. And while that truth can be brutal, it's also liberating. You offer a clarity that's rare and necessary, and even if people can't handle it right now, the impact lingers. You're the end of their illusions, the breaker of false comfort, and the spark that ignites real awakening. And that role? It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's yours. They don't fear your darkness, they fear the way you walk through it like it's your kingdom. You were never built to blend in. You're not here to make others feel cozy in their illusions or to smooth over discomfort with polite conversation. You weren't made to be liked, tamed, or easily understood. You were made to shift the atmosphere, to raise the frequency, to leave people different than how you found them. You don't walk into rooms looking for a seat at the table. You are the table. And the ones who truly recognize that don't try to impress you. They try to rise to your level. Everything about you disrupts the norm. You don't do performative connection. You don't bend to fit expectations. You don't shrink to avoid being too much. You move with a level of awareness, clarity, and presence that exposes everything fake, weak, or unready. And that's exactly why you're unforgettable. You don't comfort. You catalyze. You don't chase. You choose. You don't echo noise. You carry truth. People project, avoid, ghost, praise, or misunderstand you, but no one walks away untouched. That's what happens when someone lives in their full truth. They become a mirror, a fire, and a map all at once. You're not cold, you're just clear. You're not alone, you're just rare. You don't lack connection, you demand real ones. And that standard, it either elevates people or ejects them. There is no in-between, so no. You're not the villain, you're the signal, the shift, the standard. The quiet revolution in a world of noise, and if that makes some people uncomfortable, let it. You weren't sent to be accepted. You were sent to awaken. If this message struck something deep in you, if it echoed truths you felt but never had words for, then don't just scroll away. This space was built for the rare ones, the disruptors, the truth carriers like you. So here's what to do next. Subscribe, because this isn't just content, it's a movement, and you belong in it. Like, if you felt seen, called out, or activated, that energy fuels this mission. Comment, drop your truth below. Speak raw, speak real. Your voice might be the mirror someone else needs. Share with someone who's not afraid to evolve, someone who's ready to face themselves, or better yet, be themselves. This channel isn't for everyone. It's not curated for comfort. It's designed for awakening. If you've read this far, chances are you're one of the rare ones. Welcome to the frequency. Let's shake the world.